I've got very clear visions in my head of people that absolutely do not treat their body as a temple, Michael, that treat it more as like a 24/7 rave and shove all kinds of stuff into it and then expect the NHS and the taxpayers to pick up the pieces when it goes wrong. Your thoughts?
I mean, it is one of the things that people are talking about now in terms of the obesity crisis in this country, the massive strain that is putting on the NHS. I'm actually a little disappointed that after COVID, which we know if you're overweight, had an increased risk for that reason, that we've not seen a big government campaign to actually encourage people, particularly younger people, to get out there, go to the gym and eat healthily as much as possible. I mean, I certainly don't envy the job that Sajid Javid has got. It's a legacy of lockdown. We have these huge backlogs. A&E waiting times were getting pretty bad anyway before lockdown. Obviously, that has exacerbated everything. But it talks of apps and things like that. I mean, I think what most people want is to be able to see a health professional face-to-face and have that face-to-face contact to help diagnose things early. And I'll just throw this in as well, Michelle, something, and it relates to housing, which we touched on earlier as well. The fact is, we have a surging population. We recently saw a few years ago the highest annual population growth in this country for 70 years, over 500,000 in a single year, most of that due to mass migration. The fact is, when you talk about how many doctors and nurses we need, of course, if you continue with mass migration and a population surge, you'll need to continually expand the NHS due to that increased demand is only going to grow greater.
Amana?
So I fundamentally disagree with what has just been said in terms of mass migration. I don't think that is the thing that is putting pressure on the NHS. I think that people are living longer and therefore we have an elderly population and therefore they are required more health checks and more care. But I have questions on these changes that Sajid Javid wants to implement. I mean, he's saying that people who have been on the waiting list for 18 months or more will be offered an alternative healthcare option. And so my question is, what does that exactly mean? To me, this seems like a conservative agenda of privatising the NHS in a more formal way. And the reason why I say this is because are people going to be offered an option to pay for healthcare from private companies and contractors? That's the fundamental question I have. I think that healthcare should be free at point of use. But I think that the NHS does need reform. But I think that it needs reform in the sense of listening to the doctors and nurses on the front lines who are treating patients. They know what they need in order to get through serving and making sure people live and are healthy. Unfortunately, I agree with what Ashley said in terms of managerial, business, bureaucracy, weighing down the NHS and not really looking at patient care. On the NHS app, I think that the real question for me is, with an elderly population, will people be able to even use that app to get the preventative tools that Sajid Javid is talking about?
Michael, I think I can hear an intake of breath
I just don't
in my left ear.
I don't like this whole idea of society as we become sort of a nation and a world that's just continually staring at devices all the time and everything becomes computerised. And I'm not anti-technology at all, far from it. But when it comes to health, I really do think being face-to-face and having a face-to-face diagnosis can never be replaced by video chats or anything else. And as you mentioned, particularly when it comes to elderly people, they want to have that face-to-face contact, and that really needs to be a top priority.